the undercover agent. What else did you tell him?
Told him some money is supposed to be involved. She was supposed to get a lot of money if we did it. Baker told me.
A 16-year-old meets a grown man through a dating app and ends up murdered and dismembered. Investigators are now reaching out to the public as they continue searching for her remains and for answers. And a spring break tragedy. The father of a missing college student saying it's way too early to rule out foul play. He's demanding an intensified search on the beaches of the Dominican Republic. Also, we are looking ahead to a big day in court for Lori Vallow Daybell. She's arguing a slew of motions this morning, including her big fight to keep cameras out. Plus, a family divided over the Menendez brothers. One side is slamming the DA for opposing resentencing, while an uncle of theirs who wanted them to stay locked up passes away. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Tuesday morning to you and welcome to Opening Statements. I'm your host, Julie Grant. Are you ready for some coffee and some court? That's what we do every weekday morning right here, and we're so glad you are here today. Grab that cup of coffee right now. It's time for my opening statement. He may serve in Hollywood, but DA Nathan Hochman is not following anybody's script. He is calling out the lies of Lal and Eric Menendez as he opposes resentencing. Fact, they savagely murdered their mother and their father. And largely through the magic of Hollywood, they've garnered sympathy. While the series on their life may be entertaining, remember, the writers don't have to be tied to the facts, as prosecutors must be. Nathan Hochman has taken an oath to follow the rule of law. And the DA reminded us on Monday that in the brothers' push for release, they are still distorting the facts. The fact that their self-defense claim was fabricated. The fact that they offered changing stories of their claims of sexual abuse. The fact that they suborned perjury and tried to encourage others to commit perjury as well. Bottom line, Hochman says until they fully accept responsibility for their crimes, they can't avail themselves of the benefits of California's resentencing law. I say bravo, DA Hochman. You haven't succumbed to public pressure magnified by a Hollywood story. You stayed focused on the real facts, and you upheld the rule of law and honored your oath of office. And that, my friends, is what a true minister of justice does. That's my opening statement, and we're going to be talking much more about the Menendez brothers coming up this hour. But first, let's get you your daily docket.
The undercover agent. What else did you tell him?
Told him some money is supposed to be involved. She was supposed to get a lot of money if we did it. Baker told me she's loaded. She wants him gone. She's gonna get paid.
In California, the state is expected to rest its case in the celebrity hairstylist murder trial. That's going to start up at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. In Iowa, jury deliberations expected today in the Visions of Violence murder trial. That one starts up at 10 a.m. And in Arizona, we've got convicted killer Lori Vallow Daybell back in court for a motions hearing at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We're going to take you there live when that begins. And that is, of course, our top story for you this morning. Counselor Cult Mom, shall we call her, is fighting to keep the cameras out of the courtroom this morning. Lori Vallow Daybell is going to be in Arizona again representing herself.
This defense has yet to find any evidence of a conspiracy in the 100,939 pages that have been turned over by the state. The state does not get to say, like they did in their last motion to us, in their last answer, to say, oh, we gave you over 100,000 pages, so that ought to keep you busy. That's not how it works. These are serious charges, and these are serious consequences for these charges.
So let's take a look at the other motions on that judge's docket this morning as they pertain to this case. So we have The defendant's two separate motions for some specific discovery. We also have a state motion regarding Alex Cox's statements. That's Lori's deceased brother and her unindicted co-conspirator. So that should be really interesting to watch. And we've got the state's motion regarding Tylee's hearsay statements. Okay, Tylee, one of the victims in the Idaho case, Lori's daughter. We've got the scheduling of the trial, the jury selection process, all of these things to be discussed this morning. So it should be a busy morning, because remember, March 31st is when they're going to pick that jury. Let's talk about all of this. I have two great trial attorney guests standing by. I want to bring them in now. Melba Pearson and Randolph Rice are with us. Good morning to you both. So let's start a little bit with this idea that she doesn't want the court TV cameras to film her trial. But yet, as we know, she did that nice sit-down interview with Dateline Friday night and seemed to enjoy the spotlight. Melba, what do you think?
Well, good morning, Julie and Randolph. And I am a little surprised that she is asking for cameras not to be in the courtroom, again, because we saw how much she just loved the spotlight. And she's always, whenever she's coming into court and the cameras are on her, she's smiling, almost like this is a big joke or this is her big moment in the spotlight. But the reality is there is a deep public interest, which is one of the things the judge has to consider. Like, is there some sort of reasonable public interest for this trial to be broadcast publicly, or is this going to somehow prejudice the defendant? And because of her previous interviews, her sit-down interviews, her constant being in the spotlight, I think it's going to be a hard argument for her to make now that all of a sudden cameras in the courtroom are going to somehow prejudice her case. I think that ship sailed a long time ago. So I don't see anything doing with that particular motion.
Melba, thank you. We pulled just a small excerpt from the motion. This is, I guess you could say, the crux of her argument. It says that a commercial featuring her and her husband, Chad Daybell, runs constantly throughout the day. She's talking about it on court TV, and has falsely characterized, libeled, and slandered the defendants. Okay, Randolph, she's already been convicted, as we know, of doing 3 murders, 2 of those murders being her own 2 children and Chad's first wife, Tammy. You know, I know I'm a little partial, but is court TV really the problem, or is her conduct the problem? Her conduct's what landed her in the courtroom.
Yeah, you're right, Julian. Good morning. You know, her actions are what sort of caused these stories to be told, and under the civil laws, the libel and slander is not a case if it's true. And that's what we have here. We have truths being broadcast by court TV, and you can't say, well, because they're putting information out there that somehow I'm prejudiced by this. The fact of the matter is that she loves the cameras, which was evident by her appearance on Dateline or recently. So I don't understand this. It seems to be sort of just like the direction of the wind. She's decided to change her position, or maybe it's just something that she wants to go argue to cause even more stories to be written. So I just don't get this one on her part.
No, not at all. Randolph, thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, what truth is a defense to defamation? Okay, Cult Mom. She's also her own lawyer, which is stunning, but not stunning given her past behavior. I want to ask you both about that. You both know how hard it is to go through law school, learn to try cases, and to be great at trying cases. It takes a long time, right, to get to the level where you two are, Melba and Randolph. So your thoughts on this woman repping herself on this homicide case in Arizona? Melba, your thoughts, please.
Julie, I think she's on the express route to a conviction, because I think there's an old adage, I believe it was Abraham Lincoln, I hope I'm correct on that, but any attorney that represents themselves has a fool for a client. And so the reality is, as you so rightly stated, you know, you go through law school, you have to learn when to make objections, what the grounds are. You know when arguments are, you know the legal arguments to make, you know case law. And, you know, like for instance, you saw her clip where she was saying, oh, they gave me 190,000 pages, but that's not enough, I want more. It's like, well, what specifically are you looking for? Because again, the state has a burden to turn over discovery, but they don't have to turn over work product. There's certain things that she's not entitled to. So again, that ignorance is going to basically cause her to harm herself. And then also with her whole conspiracy mindset and, you know, all the strange things we've heard her say over the years, you know, the jury is not going to feel sympathy for her. So I think this is a very bad call on her part, and she's going to get convicted.
Great points. And thank you for the blunt analysis, Melba. I don't know where she thinks she's going. I mean, she's already got multiple life sentences. She said in that Dateline interview that the future looks very bright for her and Chad. Let's take a look back at that clip. Again, Dateline, the interview was with Keith Morrison.
How could you possibly think that Chad would be exonerated after what happened?
The same way I will be exonerated. We will both be exonerated in the future.
Because?
I have seen things in the future that Jesus showed me when I was in heaven. And we were not in jail. And we were not in prison. And they were still in the future.
Okay, Randolph, I would think she would be very tough to represent as a client. You know, I mean, I don't know what's better, having her as a client, having a rep herself. There is standby counsel there in Arizona to help her. Would you speak to how it goes for that lawyer and then also for the prosecutors on the other side dealing with this pro se defendant who thinks that exoneration is what's coming?
Yeah, I mean, standby counsel has one of the toughest jobs here because of the fact that all the beliefs that she has that seem to just not line up with reality. So they are going to certainly have a tough job of sort of stepping in when need be. But from a prosecutor standpoint, it actually kind of makes me nervous in situations when we have pro se, when I was a prosecutor and we had pro se defendants, because you just don't know what crazy thing is going to come out of their mouth. And you hope that the judge will try to keep the rules, you know, apply the rules, because the rules keep the trial going on track. But you never know. Sometimes a judge says, well, you know what, I just don't want this one coming back on appeal. I might let this one slide. And so it makes it tough for the prosecutors to plan out their case in these situations.
Right. Randolph, thank you for that. And then, Melby, you both, Randolph and Melby, you both have served as prosecutors, and the judges, I know, I'm sure you've seen judges have to be extra careful with defendants like this. It's almost like they're kind of assisting them, but not assisting them. Would you speak to the concerns the judge has, Melba?
Well, you're right, Julie. It's a very delicate balance because they're not allowed to serve as counsel for anyone. They are the impartial arbiter of what's going on in the courtroom. So they're trying to make sure that the case is as clean as possible in case there is an appeal later on down the line. They are aware that they're dealing with someone who has no legal knowledge or training, and they may encourage them and say, but before you ask that question, maybe you want to talk to standby counsel, or maybe you want to talk to standby counsel about this, if they think that the defendant is really going down the wrong path in terms of demanding something or getting overboard. But it becomes very difficult for the judge because you're basically trying to prevent the trial from becoming a circus. Yes. And I do not envy the judge in this case at all.
No, Mel, but you know, and I'm sure we're probably going to see the judge having to explain things to Lori today. Like, for instance, when I'm seeing her daughter's hearsay statements, I'm thinking, oh, get ready. You both know this. There are lawyers and judges who mess up the rules of hearsay all the time. See it every day. So we'll see what happens today. God bless everybody involved in this case, and may justice come for Charles Vallow. We'll get ready to watch Cult Moms hearing at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Melba and Randolph, stand by for more questions, please. We're going to hit a break. When we come back, here's what's coming up on Opening Statements.
The key issue of exhibiting insight, full insight into their crimes, and completely accepting responsibility for their actions. This is where the Menendezes, like Sirhan, also fall short.
DA Hochman is not going to push for resentencing for the Menendez brothers, and some of their family members are mad about it. We'll talk about it coming up. Plus, a missing Pitt student on spring break goes missing in the Dominican Republic. Officials are saying that she may have drowned, but that's not what her father is saying. We're bringing in our investigators live next.
Grieving widow or mastermind behind a murder.
Monica Cementelli is accused of plotting to kill her husband.
Famed celebrity hairstylist Fabio Cementelli.
Prosecutors say she and her lover killed Fabio to collect a big life insurance policy.
The defense may say she's a bad woman, but she wouldn't be involved in a murder.
It's a whodunit Hollywood story, but will there be a twist that no one sees?
The Celebrity Stylist Murder Trial, today, only on Court TV.
Now for what's trending in true crime. Officials believe that the missing Pitt College student in the Dominican Republic may have died by drowning. But her father wants to expand the investigation. 20-year-old Sudiksha Kunaki was last seen in the popular tourist town of Punta Cana. She was on spring break with 5 of her friends. Authorities believe that Kunaki went missing last Thursday after a walk on the beach right near her hotel. According to the police report, she and another person went for a swim and were caught by a big wave. Her father spoke to ABC News describing her final message to him.
My daughter said that she's enjoying her brave spring break and everything was going okay. And she was really happy.
Now, the search for Kunaki continues this morning. No signs of her body being located. We're asking, is foul play likely in her disappearance? I've got 2 great investigators standing by to help me tackle that question. With Black Ops Private Investigations, Manuel Gomez is here, and geographic profiler Douglas McGregor joins us as well. Good morning to you both. Manuel, let me begin with you, please. Do you think that this could be something where foul play happened?
Absolutely, because she was seen walking on the beach with a guy at 4:50 in the morning. And there's something people don't know about the Dominican Republic, a lot of people. The Dominican Republic is a second world country. That means this is a country that borders between a third world country and a second world. The people there are very poor in the outside community. Sex trafficking is extremely rampant. Crime is very bad. And the fact that they're spending all this time looking on the water, I think is useless. This girl, I can almost guarantee it, is been taken. She's the perfect candidate for sex trafficking. And on this island, I've been there on 3 cases as a private investigator, 1 for sex trafficking and murder, and I've experienced the corruption there, the sex trafficking there that goes on. And the fact is that America, we actually are 30% of the sex trafficking business in the Dominican Republic. So there's no doubt in my mind that this girl was taken. There's no doubt in my mind if they put a reward of like $50,000, they will give her up. But the fact that she's getting so much media coverage and no reward, they're in fear and they will not turn her over. You have to appeal to what attracts them, and that's the money.
Oh, this is fascinating analysis from you, Manuel. Thank you for that. Doug McGregor, I saw you tweeting about this case yesterday, and I thought, oh my gosh, I need to ask you if a geographic profile would be smart right now for this student. Your thoughts, please.
I think at this time, the search has to continue, the search and rescue effort. I reflect some of Manuel's thoughts, but the search and rescue effort has to continue. A geographic profile wouldn't necessarily help at this time until they had evidence of some criminal activity. But the profile put together by the search and rescue, their parameters, their probability mapping, that's what really has to continue at this point alongside a thorough police investigation.
Appreciate it, Doug. So ABC News is reporting that her clothing were found on the beach where authorities believe that she was last seen. They were found on a portable beach bed, but police say they have no evidence of violence at this point in time. Authorities did interview a man who was the last person believed to have been with her. Surveillance cameras caught that man coming back to the hotel where she was staying just before 10 a.m., but he came back without her. The Virginia sheriff in the county where Sudiksha Kunaki lives, her home county, not Allegheny County, where she goes to school in Pennsylvania. They told ABC that it's too early to make any judgments. Let's take a listen to that Virginia sheriff.
We are looking, obviously, at all the phone contacts that were made, the people that she was with, people she may have met. We want to make sure that we're leaving no stone unturned. And so as far as the ongoing investigation, we're very prayerful and hopeful it turns out fine.
So investigators are saying that this man that she was seen with is not being considered a suspect. So what we want to know, where do they go next? Where should they be going in this investigation? Douglas McGregor, I'll start with you this time. Your thoughts, please.
I think law enforcement is going to keep interviewing this individual. They're bringing in their resources from the United States as well, which is beneficiary. And they're not going to formally say he's a suspect until they have evidence of that. But their investigation is they're going to focus on a public investigation and a more behind-the-scenes back-end investigation. The public investigation for now is probably going to focus on the search and rescue effort, the possibility of an accident or a drowning. But in the back end, they're also going to conduct their criminal investigation into the possibility of nefarious action by this individual or by something else such as trafficking or kidnapping. But they're going to be careful not to speculate and make that public until they have evidence of such.
Mm-hmm. And just to follow up, if they see something that you said could indicate criminal activity, you said then and only then you think a geographic profile would be helpful.
Yes, for a geographic profile, you need certain elements to be there. You either need a body, you need criminal activity, you need a suspect, but you need something else. Right now, we just have a woman that's missing on a beach, and the best thing at this point in time is the canvassing, the interviewing by law enforcement, the reviewing of surveillance and CCTV, and cell phone data if they have it, and then the search and rescue effort in the entire area, at sea, but also, did she walk back, stumble, and hit her head on a rock? So the investigating the entire resort area, the forests around it, the park next door to it, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Doug, thank you for that. Manuel Gomez, you have a long, very illustrious career doing investigations. You're working privately now, but you've done it with our military. You've done it for the NYPD. You've been to Punta Cana. Tell me, what would you do if you were there? Where would you begin if you were looking for this young lady?
First thing I would do is go on the beach and you'll watch the individuals actually approach the Americans and the tourists, offering them drugs and sex and so forth and opportunities to engage in sexual opportunities. The second thing I would go to is the bartenders. The bartenders are the ones, when I was there, were trying to steer me to sex trafficking. All right, and to get to buy women and so forth. That's the second thing. And then the third thing I would do is I would infiltrate and go to the local gangs and areas and go to there, because they would know. And you have to understand something, Julie. This culture in the Dominican Republic, their culture is not to snitch, not to speak up. They sing about it in their songs. There's numerous songs with J-Lo and Cardi B talking about not snitching, okay? The only way we're going to get this girl is not by looking in the water. She is not in the water. It's by having a reward so much for like $50,000 to $100,000, where even the sex trafficker himself is going to go, wait a minute, let's turn over.
I love it. I love hearing what you would do. We have to leave it here for now today, but we're going to continue following this story as the search continues for Sudiksha Konaki. Manuel Gomez, you're coming with us. Douglas McGregor, we've got to say goodbye to you. Thank you for coming on the program this morning. And still to come here on Opening Statements.
She was beaten and tortured because they could not find this piece of jewelry.
Guns drawn, police threw him down on the ground.
And her body is somewhere possibly in a landfill. I'm begging you, please, make sure you know what your kids are doing on social media.
A 16-year-old lured through a dating app by a grown man, then killed and dismembered. So how did this all happen? We're spotlighting the case investigation next. Plus, the LA County District Attorney says he's opposing the resentencing of convicted killers Lal and Eric Menendez. Oh, but their family isn't happy about it. We'll discuss what's tipping the scales. Welcome back. We're shining the spotlight this morning on a murder case. A 16-year-old girl who authorities say was lured through a dating app by a 35-year-old man. That girl, Miranda Corset, has been missing since last month. This is her. St. Petersburg police say that she was killed inside of this man's house, and that evidence found inside that home leads them to believe that Miranda Corset was also murdered and dismembered. They still haven't located her body. Now, police are reportedly working to find those dismembered remains. 35-year-old Stephen Gress, on the left there, is in custody facing kidnapping and murder charges, and his 37-year-old partner has also been arrested and charged with murder. Julia Salamone from Scripps News in St. Petersburg, Florida, reports.
A frantic few days inside this St. Pete duplex.
Guns drawn, police threw him down on the ground, handcuffed him, put him in the cruiser. Ever since then, cops here 24/7 for 3 days.
That neighbor recalling the arrest of 35-year-old Stephen Gress last Wednesday, March 5th. Police say they took him in for pointing a harpoon at his girlfriend, Michelle Brandis, and possessing drugs. But evidence discovered inside and at another home in Largo are far more grisly. On February 14th, detectives say 16-year-old Miranda Corsetti was lured to the St. Pete home to meet up with Gress. Corsetti went home that night, but a day later, she returned and stayed.
On the 20th, at the house, there was some type of dispute over some missing jewelry. So from the 20th to the 24th, she was beaten and tortured because they could not find this piece of jewelry.
Police Chief Anthony Holloway says they killed her and then drove her body to a home in Largo, where evidence inside led them to believe she was dismembered. Then, detectives say her body was driven to Ruskin and dumped in a dumpster.
And her body is somewhere, possibly in a landfill somewhere in that county.
Which is what's making the search for her so difficult. Police were asking Brandis to turn herself in, and on Saturday, she did. She faced a judge for her first appearance on Sunday. Chief Holloway has a warning for other parents.
Please, I'm begging you, please, make sure you know what your kids are doing on social media.
Brandis and Gress are both charged with first-degree murder. Heather Lee, ABC Action News.
Oh, this is so sad. You know, and what's even sadder to me is that this young child went to meet him for the first time. And then after the meeting, she went home. She got back to her house safely. What a gift. But then she returned back to the home of this adult man and his adult girlfriend. And that's when she never made it out alive. Apparently, it was a ring, was the piece of jewelry. The dispute was over, but this should have never happened. This child should have never been lured by these people. Let's bring in our guest, still with me, private investigator Manuel Gomez. I want to welcome in criminology expert, professor at St. Thomas University, and author Dr. Debbie Goodman. Dr. Debbie, let me begin with you. Help us get into the mind of someone like this adult man who was apparently 35 years old and communicating with this teenager on the dating app, and then saw in person that she's a teen, but still continued that. And girlfriend, I don't know how much she knew up front, but who knows if she had communications. But both adults here, that child shouldn't have been in the house. What does it say to you about those adult actors here?
Absolutely, Julie. It says to me this is a crime from beginning, middle to the end of evil. And if we may, we'll use the acronym of evil, E for extreme and excessive brutality and this heinous and horrible display of conduct that our young victim endured. The V for violence, you know, within the one case, we now have at least 4 violent crimes, potentially more, kidnapping, aggravated assault and battery, murder, and then dismemberment. And in criminology, Julie, we refer to to the latter as murder concealment. And then the I for indecency. These individuals treated her in such a brutal, barbaric manner. And lastly, the L, I would say, is for lawlessness. Clearly, these two co-defendants have zero regard for laws, rules, humanity, and I hope the state of Florida will react and respond with swift, severe, and certain penalty for both of them.
Dr. Debbie, so eloquently put. You were spot on. I was taking notes. Evil, excessive, violent, indecent, and lawlessness. All of that apparently going on in this house, taking the life of that child who was lured. Thank you for that. Manuel Gomez, let's talk about the luring, these predators, how they do this. What do you think when you hear about the facts of this case?
Well, unfortunately, the Miranda Corsett case is a perfect example of grooming. And this goes on all the time on dating apps and also via games, when kids play their games and Fortnite and things like that. These predators who are out there are looking for ideal candidates like this young lady. Unfortunately, this guy, he went and did it to the max. He took her out. He showed her an amazing time. He built her security and her trust. This is why, Julie, she went back the next day, because she felt comfortable. He even was so tenacious to go and drive her home. I mean, this guy, I was doing an analysis and searching online about Stephen Grease. There's pictures of him up online holding a book saying Bobbitt Whacker set from Lorena Bobbitt, holding a knife. And then in the picture shows him with a bloody handprint on the wall and a door ripped off the frame. This guy was already glorifying dismemberment. This guy already was violation of a felony probation. He should have been in jail. And parents, take this case as a warning. You need to put an app on your kids' phones. I use it and I recommend it for most of my clients. M-Spy, it costs $1 a day. It'll tell you where your kid's at, who's talking to them, let you hear the conversations. We need to be more proactive. This lady, Miranda, is just one of thousands that happen every day.
Wow. Manuel, so much. So I have such a reaction here. First of all, everybody needs to watch this show because we have the best guests on, like you and Dr. Debbie Goodman, and the information that you share. I haven't seen any media outlet covering this case share what you just shared with us, Manuel, doing that independent investigation. And you do it with all our cases. You'll look things up, you'll hear things, you've got sources. And the fact that this guy is broadcasting that, and yet that's not the headline. The headline, you know, of course, this beautiful child is still missing, and you know, we hope that her body can be recovered so she can be properly buried. But the fact that this guy may be glorifying dismemberment, as you said, based on his profile picture. Dr. Debbie, what did you think when you hear that from Manuel?
Oh, I think Manuel is spot on, and I appreciate his step-by-step approach to literally warn parents. This is important, Julie. Our children are at great risk of individuals such as Grease and others who literally are spending time, effort, energy, preying upon our youth for the most brutal and barbaric of victimizations. And he's right, as you've heard me say before, I don't even think we have a good actual valid number on how many children are victimized in this capacity throughout our calendar years, but it can be prevented. It has to be prevented, and through the due diligence of parents and saying no, 2 little letters. It's okay. We like to say yes to our children, but safety, security, and survival has got to be paramount every single day.
Yes, yes, preach, Dr. Debbie, preach. The idea that this guy might have a fixation on dismemberment, what does that say to you, Dr. Debbie, about his mind?
Well, believe it or not, Julia, I think when it comes to dismemberment, it's actually going to be an important talking point when it gets to trial. Why? Because for me as a criminologist, it shows, again, as we said at the onset, murder concealment. You see, when people are insane, they don't know what they're doing, they don't know what they're doing is wrong. but I actually look at dismemberment as the action one takes to conceal their crime, and therefore they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing is wrong, but again, all of this from beginning, middle, until the end, unfortunately, tragically, of what our young victim endured suggests to me planning, preparation, premeditation, and hopefully at the end, the harshest penalty possible from the law.
Yes, a sensational analysis from you both. Dr. Debbie Goodwin, Manuel Gomez of Black Ops Private Investigations. Thank you both so much for everything. We'll leave this case here for now and continue revisiting it as the case progresses against the two that have been charged. Coming up next here on Opening Statements, the Menendez family speaking out after that big press conference that DA Nathan Hochman held. He's saying he is not supportive of resentencing. But before we go to break, come to your television set. Look at this. Oh, we got an updated picture for you. A new mugshot of Mr. Wade Wilson. Remember him? No, you couldn't forget all those tattoos. He's on death row right now for the murders of 2 women. And we found this recent mugshot, and we thought he looks a little different with the buzz cut. We also noticed that according to the records in the prison, he's in disciplinary confinement, which means he must have broken some rules. Not shocking. We'll be right back.
10:15, a dog is heard barking.
This is the first case you'll ever hear that you've got to determine the time of death by a dog's wail.
There were no ring cameras. There were no cell phones to ping off locations. Was that white Bronco there at the time you drove by it?
I didn't see it. There was one critical witness that was never called.
She saw OJ's white Bronco.
Trial and Error. Why did OJ win? A Court TV original series. New episode Sunday night, 8 Eastern and Pacific. Only on Court TV.
Welcome back. Now for what's tipping the scales. In just over a week, the Menendez brothers will appear in court for their resentencing hearing. But what will the DA's big announcement on Monday and the effect of it have on the outcome? So Monday, Nathan Hochman announced that if the brothers want to be released, they need to come clean and accept responsibility for their crimes and all of the lies and the stories that they've told. Well, members of the Menendez family are not happy.
My 85-year-old mother with cancer sitting 10 feet away from him, literally sobbing in front of him. And then to see him decide to go make a press conference that didn't have to be a press conference, and just in gruesome detail and even a little bit embellished. There were details that weren't even accurate as far as the original crime scene. So that felt really hurtful.
Got to fact check her on that one. The DA was spot on the facts on this case. But that's beside the point. The most vocal Menendez relative who did not support their release passed away yesterday before the DA's announcement was made. Milton Anderson was Kitty Menendez's brother, and he believed what the prosecution, what the police believed, and what the jury believed, that the killings were motivated by greed, that the boys wanted money, the inheritance. The dad was going to cut them out of the will. But sadly, Milton Anderson passed before DA Hochman made that announcement, so he didn't get to hear the DA's opposition. Now, we know there are sides that are split. This case has become kind of polarizing. So we're asking this morning, did the DA get it right? Is he right to say they're not deserving of resentencing because part of that law involves the acceptance of responsibility, and he says they haven't done it? Let's bring back in our legal analyst guests, Melba Pearson and Randolph Rice. Okay, Randolph, let me go to you first here, please. Your thoughts on the DA's decision?
Well, it was an incredible press conference. If you watched it, it was about 35 to 40 minutes long, and he laid out essentially an opening statement to why he's not going to ask for the boys to be resentenced. And really, they came down to 2 big things. One is he said, look, there have been 20 lies that they have told. They have admitted to 4 of them, but there are still 16 more lies that they have not come clean about. And the second thing is that they are a reasonable risk to society, and that's the big factor that that why they're not obviously asking for this resentencing. So Nathan Hochman did an amazing job yesterday. Kudos to him. You know, he laid it all out perfectly.
Yeah, he sure did. He is careful. Let me see, just meticulous with the details. It's almost like he was giving an opinion, almost like we've seen judges do something. They put their opinion on the record. You see all the rationale. Melba, your thoughts. Did he get it right?
Well, I'm going to have to play devil's advocate here.
Yeah, feel free to disagree. Feel free to, by all means, my friend. Go ahead.
But this is what I'll say. First off, this is completely within the DA's purview, and one DA can disagree with the other, right? Both of them are looked at the same set of evidence and came to different conclusions. And I'm referring to DA George Gascon, who was the one who basically started this whole ball rolling, and now DA Hochman disagrees with his assessment, which is completely his right to do. Now, this puts it all on the judge to decide whether or not they should be released, because there's still a pathway through the judiciary. There's also the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, through the parole board, is investigating this as well. I think it is very important to note that the Menendez family, who are the actual victims in this case as well, are supporting their release, which I think is very unique and very telling. And so maybe somehow this family has been able to come together and find peace. Is it right that the judicial system denies them of that? I don't know. But I'm just very carefully noting the fact that the family wants him released, with the exception of that one uncle. And then the last point I'll make is that there have been allegations. I believe there was a young man that was formerly a member of Menudo that accused Mr. Menendez of molesting him when he was young. And we do know that, unfortunately, the boys that were part of Menudo some of them had dealt with sexual abuse during that time frame. So this is a tough one. This is a tough one. I'll just leave it there.
No, it is. And I love your analysis, Melba. It is tough, you know, and I'm sure it's tough for the DA's office to be speaking with those family members, because we know, you know, Mr. Milton Anderson, God bless him, God rest his soul, you know, who passed away, Kitty's brother, was really the only one speaking out, or at least that we've seen, saying, you know, I want them to stay behind bars, you know, where there's a huge faction of them who've been, you know, connected with the brothers' attorneys and very vocal about wanting to petition for their release. George Gascon, we know, had filed that petition already, and Nathan Hochman is going to ask that it be withdrawn because his position differs, as you noted, Melba. But he kind of left the door open, didn't he, Randolph? In that press conference, even though he said right now, here today, I'm opposed to this, down the line, if you come clean and you just be honest about this and accept what you did and why you really did it, then you could be eligible.
Yeah, and to touch on a couple points that Melba made was that they made a comparison between the Sirhan case and Governor Newsom analyzing that case in terms of reducing his sentence for parole at his age. Now, you're right about the fact that the new DA has said, look, if you come clean, if you start admitting some of these things that you did and say, hey, we were wrong, we did the wrong thing here, because that's what they want to hear, then there is a path to a resentencing. But right now, the DA Hochman says you haven't done enough to show us that, you know, you're really sorry for what you did, and also that you're still, we believe, a threat to society.
Right. Excellent points, Randolph. We have to leave it there for now, but I know we're going to keep talking about these guys. Randolph Rice and Melba Pearson, thank you both for all of the great insight and analysis today. We'll look forward to having you both back very soon. And that is all for this episode of Opening Statements.